Welcome to the HR Huddle podcast, presented by Sapient Insights Group, the ultimate resource for all things HR. It's time to get in the huddle.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the HR Huddle. I'm your host, Teri Zipper, CEO and Managing Partner at Sapient Insights Group. And I'm back for another exciting episode of HR We Have a Problem. This is the show where we break down the big and most relevant issues of the day. We help you make sense of what they mean for you, and we talk about what you might do about them. So joining me today are a couple of colleagues from MMA, Steve Hansen, National Practice Leader for HR Technology, and Ashley Tsolis, the Manager of HR Tech Consulting. Welcome, Steve and Ashley.
Thanks, Teri.
Thanks for having us.
Glad to be here.
This episode has been a long time coming, and I'm so glad we were finally able to make it happen because this is a big, hairy problem. And I know a lot of people are always looking for how to solve benefits problems.
Yeah, looking forward to it. We have a lot to share.
I've been getting a lot of questions about Ben admin tech and how to make the most of your broker relationships. And I thought, who better to ask than the two of you? So does that sound like a good plan to you?
Sounds great.
All right, then let's get into the huddle. So we were just talking about this before the call, there's a lot of HR tech in benefits. I mean, we survey 10 different application areas, and a lot of additional areas within that bring the annual survey close to like 60 different applications that we look at. And a lot of them fall within this sort of benefits and wellness applications category. So it makes it a very complex process area, given just how many different and varying benefit structures there are. I just call it a big, hairy area. So I know one of the things, as we've been talking over the last year or so, as brokers, I think there's a lot of things you guys do for clients that people may not be thinking about, or they may not even think to ask their broker to help them with. So I wanted to start with sort of what are some of the advantages of working with a broker? And then we can maybe get into some more detail about what all kinds of things are you helping people with?
Yeah, I can start with that one. So I think there's a lot of services that people forget about outside of the benefits realm that the broker does, right? So wellness, HR tech services, HR consulting, safety, compliance, claims. Like these are all things that we have special teams for that focus on, right? And they do this year round, where a lot of times it just comes across the HR professional's desk once a year. So if you can use these additional resources with these experts, it helps eliminate some of those burdens that you might not know what to do with in the first place. So a lot of brokers offer these services either as a value add or for a small fee. And I think it just integrates well with the benefits piece that you're already working with on that broker.
Yeah, I know you guys were helping one of your clients with some change management work. So I thought that was something interesting. Everybody's got to do change management at one point or another, no matter how big or small they are. And I personally did not realize that you guys got into that level of support and consultation with your clients.
Yeah, I can share too. At MMA, Teri, we bundle those as risk service, or we brand them as risk services. At our peer organizations, they may be called professional services or a number of different things, but there's a ton of consultants in that space that can help clients through any of those areas that Ashley mentioned.
Yeah. And I know you guys were also doing some vendor selection at some level, or helping them really identify what are the right tools for the kinds of things they need in their organization, depending on their size and depending on their scope of work and their industry.
Yeah, we make recommendations to our clients as far as what vendors might be a good fit, or at least which vendors are worth evaluating. We try to eliminate some of the noise in the very busy marketplace that is HR technology. Obviously, one of the ways we do that is with the wonderful data that you guys provide every year as just an industry benchmark that we can help educate our clients on. But the same is true for our HR consulting team, right? Like they're making recommendations on a daily basis about how to address the broader HR issues outside of just technology. So yeah, it's a small piece of what our team does. But yeah, we can talk all about HR tech consulting, or it evolves rapidly into like project management, into integrations, there's going to be a different level of service from every broker. But I think the larger brokers should have pretty built out dedicated teams for that.
Yeah. And I think that goes back to the point before of we do this day in and day out, right? So from HR, you might only be doing evaluation every 3 years. Hopefully not, right? But every 3 years you're going through that. So you might not know the questions to ask. And so that's where like the broker teams can really help, like Stephen said, go through the noise.
Yeah. Do you find that your clients are asking these questions, or is this a situation where just through other consultation and conversations, you find out they're looking for a solution and you kind of jump in to help? Or do they really know this is a service that you're offering and they can actually get support for that?
I think clients very rarely know. They don't know to ask for it necessarily, but they're working with their day-to-day contacts. And those folks inside of MMA know, oh, we're spending a lot of time working on payroll. How is your payroll vendor doing? Is there a way we can help you there? And that's sort of how we get introduced to the client. And again, true for all compliance. So our account teams are really trained on all those different services and know when to introduce us.
Yeah. That's great. Well, so when you think about, and I don't know who your primary client is within the organization, but I'm guessing it's the benefits leader and the people in the benefits team, right? What are some of the things that you think benefits leaders should be focused on? Like, where do you see some of the gaps in what the current capabilities are and what organizations are actually doing?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is data. When you ask what should they be focused on, I think it's data. And that's going to be an underlying theme for a lot of this conversation. As far as where some of the big gaps are, I think we're going to see leaps forward when it comes to integrations. Those integrations, whether it be with payroll vendors, with carriers, with demographic data coming from your HRIS, all those integrations that connect to benefits are going to allow HR teams to be more agile. And this is a space in technology where I think our whole industry lags behind a little bit. When you think about like social media and all the APIs and marketing teams and marketing tech companies and all the API, like there's so few APIs in this space. We're primed for enhancements there. I think there's also going to be constantly evolving plan designs when we think about benefits and how a benefit plan is built out and recommended. Even this year, I mean, we're seeing pretty drastic changes in the marketplace with what sort of products and combination of layers can be offered to certain clients that's really attractive. So it's going to be really important for benefit admin tech companies to keep up with that. And I think that opportunity of kind of working with the carriers more so than just on like an EDI connection is going to be key for them. So it's also, I've been thinking about like decision support, right? That's a fairly new tool in the Ben Admin tech space. But when we think about data, once those become much more data rich, I think those are going to be way more highly adopted over the next couple of years.
Yeah, interesting. The last year's survey, the two biggest themes for data in the benefits app area was number one was around the ability to customize and configure. And number two was integrations. So, that is hopefully an area where we're going to see some change, because those are the two top areas that people are really complaining about on that front.
That's why we love Sapient Insights data. It's always just validating.
I was just going to say too, I think that goes back to like using your broker, right? When they're talking about plan design, the different changes, like knowing what HR tech you're using today is going to help to be able to go to that plan design too, because If you have some crazy plans and it's not a customizable system, you're not going to be able to build it out. And that just creates more administrative work on the end.
Do you think some of these plans are getting too complex? And I guess the reality is, if they're surveying their employees, and this is probably a question to some extent for you guys, if they're asking people what they really want from a benefits program, and organizations are responding to those wants and desires of the people who work for them, is it creating a more complex plan design, or is that just par for the course?
A little bit par for the course. I think some plans have become simpler, right? Like if we take critical illness and issue age versus attained age, right? Like we've come a long way with being able to administer that and being able to communicate what can or can't be done within systems. But like as Steven said, when we're talking about layered plans, those are becoming more complex, and we're trying to figure out how it should be set up or what we should be doing or how that's connecting to the different carriers as a whole. So some plans are getting easier because they've been around longer, and some plans are starting the gamut over again with being super complex and not knowing how to actually set it up.
Yeah. Where's the bottleneck with the integrations? I mean, is it really is it a vendor issue? Is it a carrier issue? Is it technology? Where do you see the challenge there? Or is this just that people are not working together to come up with a simpler approach to managing integrations?
Yeah, I think there's components of all the things you mentioned, Teri, but talent is a huge piece on both sides, the vendor and the carrier side. So what we are hearing on a pretty consistent basis is there's a backlog, they're working through it. Again, on both sides, it comes down to what resources are available. And the reality is this work that we do around benefits is all driven by timelines, and it's 1-1 for a lot of people, right? So that means most of these requests are coming at a certain time of the year, and it can be very difficult to staff for some of those more advanced roles and people that are able to make those connections and make those integrations work. I mean, that's a fairly unique skill set. It's difficult to hire for on a seasonal basis, but this work is very seasonal, right? So I think that's probably the biggest component, because an employer that is looking to have their vendor connect to a carrier or another vendor, and they're making that request in February, it's going to get done a lot quicker than the ones that are making that request in October, right?
Right.
I think the carriers too have a lot, like their systems might be a little bit older, right? So they're not as technical savvy, right? So I think that's part of it too. And just the compliance piece of following HIPAA regulations to ensure that it's secure protocol, that's probably also delaying some of those newer integrations that we would want.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, the compliance obviously continues to expand every year. There's a new set of rules and regulations around some of this stuff. Do you guys spend a lot of time on compliance and how that fits into the overall plans for clients, or is that really just something that, provide guidance on?
Yeah, I'd say in the benefits world, ACA is the big one. That's the big compliance 800-pound gorilla that everybody deals with. And it's just about there's a couple of ways that clients can go about getting Ben admin tech and how they can make that work with ACA. So if you have like a full HCM platform where you're buying all of your products from one vendor, your payroll, that's going to be likely more of an out-of-the-box solution. But one of the benefits is your time data and your benefits data is there, which could make ACA go a little bit smoother. When you start to get into larger organizations that are more likely to purchase a standalone Ben admin tool, then there's often at least a conversation about how do we get the benefits data and the time data in the same place so that we can run our ACA. But from an ACA standpoint, there's services within our organization that our clients can take advantage of that are completely managed. I would imagine that most of our peers in this space would have a similar service either on their HR tech team or on their compliance team. And then there's also a lot of standalone organizations that all they do is ACA compliance, and they will aggregate all of your data and they will generate all of your forms and file everything. So I'd say HR professionals do not have to go it alone on ACA. So we will provide some advisory support there. And again, I think that's fairly common service from brokers.
Yeah.
I think too, that's one of the advantages of going through your broker, right? They have all these different services, right? We talked about compliance service earlier. So if that's your Form 5500, wrap docs, right? All those different things, like your broker should be working with you to do that and stay in compliance on that. So that's one of the advantages of having those different services.
Yeah. And I think people probably underestimate how much time some of those things are going to take and how their time could be better spent in other areas if they outsourced that requirement.
For sure.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
To somebody who's you guys do it on a regular basis, right? It's a chore. So yeah, I wouldn't want to have to work on those reports. We're actually working with a client right now that is going through some integration, and they're trying to figure out what the acquiring companies' ACA hours are and how they're going to get that into their reporting so that when day one starts, they can actually combine the reporting for this prior year. So yeah, it's a big nut.
And you might not remember the right questions to ask too, right? As you're going through this, because you're doing it once a year or every once in a while with an acquisition. So
right,
those professionals would help too.
Yeah. So you talked a bit about what benefits leaders should be focused on in terms of like things like integration, plan design, looking at their data, that kind of thing. Where do you see the biggest opportunities in this space? Like what could vendors be focused on? Maybe that they're either ignoring right now or not moving fast enough that you guys think might be game changers in this area, especially for the organizations that we work for and the employees that we're entrusted to support?
Yeah, I think one of the things that comes to mind is the small market benefit space. There really is like a limited amount of trusted players there. So I think over the next few years, we'll start to see there's probably going to be an entrepreneurial side where there's new products that pop up in that small market space. And I think we'll start to see some of the larger organizations make an effort to simplify their tool. So when you think about those big standalone vendors, it's not realistic for a company with one HR person to implement that on their own. So making it simpler, making it so that they can implement it in an hour or 2 hours. The data conversion is easier. It's already being connected to some of the like getting rid of some of those roadblocks makes it easier to be attractive in the small market.
Yeah. And that market's growing so fast that somebody's going to have to step in and pick up the slack there.
Yeah, definitely.
Any other areas that you see there's going to be a focus? I mean, whether it's sort of the traditional benefits areas, or what about in some of the emerging areas like wellness or other telehealth, mental health, those types of things? We saw a big increase. It's a 25% increase in the mental health capabilities or in benefits last year in the survey, where people were reporting that they had increased or enhanced their mental health benefits.
Yeah. So frankly, Teri, I stay out of the insurance business completely and try to focus strictly on tech. But I'll tell you, the more data that vendors have an opportunity to access, the better, right? And as we talk about emerging tech, like you can't ignore AI, right? And the thing that fuels AI is the data set that it has access to. So the more data that can be inside of a Ben Admin vendor, the more effective AI is going to be into the future too. So I think all those opportunities that you mentioned are a definite yes, and they all can help shape the future for what AI is going to do for us in the Ben Admin space.
Yeah. Do you see some other roles for AI? I mean, I think there's a lot of capability there, and there's a lot of capability around some very basic things. I just did a podcast that just went out today, so you guys can check that out. But that was strictly on AI. We did a conversation with Holger Mueller, just talking about AI more in general. And he had some good thoughts on where some areas to focus might be out of the gate. And benefits was one of them. Like, how do we help people better understand their benefits and the process through using AI versus a lot of resources?
So what I've been seeing in the Ben admin tech marketplace is, like most organizations, they're trying to get their arms wrapped around how do we use AI before they are putting AI into their tech products that they're going to sell in the marketplace, right? So
Yeah.
I think some of the areas that we'll see, at least that I'm privy to, will be around automated training, being able to onboard employees faster. There's a lot of call center applications for AI that it can generate different types of prompts and responses. So there's not so many things to sort through. But right now, what I'm seeing is companies are still trying to get their own AI infrastructure in place, their own data infrastructure in place so that it can be leveraged. And the big hurdle that I think it's been solved for, but I think what held everyone up a little bit was you see tools like ChatGPT that they're trained on their inputs, right? And that becomes essentially discoverable. So a lot of organizations, including ours, have just started to release like the betas of their internal AI because they have figured out how to wall it off so that the inputs don't get publicized, right? So I think once you've got to that point, then you can start to look at, okay, our technology products, where do we use AI there? I'm no futurist, right? But I think there's the way that you can query Alexa or verbal commands. I think that's what large language models are amazing at, right? And so I imagine an HR tech professional asking a question to its Ben admin tool, right? And asking it for certain data or asking it, how does this compare to a similar size company in this area? And I think it will learn and it will be able to create the analytics and become more and more predictive. So again, not a futurist, but I think that's where I hope the industry is heading.
Yeah, I think HR professionals are hesitant on it too, because there are so many compliance pieces that they have to be aware of, right? Especially when it comes to recruiting, right? Like, is it creating any sort of bias by us using this AI and then we're not recruiting the right people for it? So I think it's going to take a lot of time for HR professionals and the HR tech that they're using to actually use it to its full capabilities.
Yeah, everybody's got it plugged in to some extent. I mean, largely what a lot of it is still machine learning.
Mm-hmm.
So we will see if it gets sentient at some point, but let's hope not.
Yeah.
But I do think people are expecting it to do a lot more than it's been capable of doing in the past, right? Which is doing and still doing is sorting through millions of records more quickly and making some of those processes much, much faster. And I think as we evolve, hopefully it will make this process simpler. I mean, I can imagine that it would make reporting simpler, right? Because I no longer have to go and figure out how to write the report and where to go to pick all the fields. I can just make the query.
Yeah.
As Steve suggested, and train it to know what I'm asking for and what some of the unique parameters are to that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the point of HR tech too, right? Is to get rid of some of that administrative burden that's on HR professionals, right? So they can focus on other things. So hopefully down the line, as AI becomes more prevalent, it helps do that too. So then we're focusing on the people within the organization, and that's how it's going to continue to have that organization be successful.
Yeah.
And Teri, despite what I was saying before about the tech being mostly internal at this time, I mean, there's still examples outside of the Ben admin space, I think, where in HR tech, we're seeing it utilized. Paycor is one that comes to mind. They just released a smart sourcing tool, which is, I don't want to mischaracterize exactly what it does, right? But it goes beyond just the job boards, and it's going to suggest sources of candidates just based on LinkedIn, just based on even their Google profile, like really across the internet. And so that's one of the newer areas that has been really well received, and I think is pretty cool. The recruiting community is pretty jazzed about it. So
yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff like that, I think, that's happening. And then there's also a lot of, as you said, sort of futurist type stuff that people are imagining this is going to solve for. And I think there's a lot of work to be done. I mean, everybody right now, as far as I can tell, most of this stuff that's in these HR technologies today are really coming packaged in the system. But I can envision a day when these become sort of additional capabilities, just like when we added analytics, for example, like that became its own thing. It became a whole genre of tools and capabilities that people needed to support that particular area. And this will probably be something similar when they start to get it to the point where it can really do some greater things.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. So one of the things I always like to ask of my guests is something that you would advise or leave the audience with that will help them on their journey. And as I think about the journey that we've been talking about here, it's really been focused on how to make things simpler from a benefits perspective, right? And how to support the organization, how to make life easier for our Ben admins teams. So as you think about that, are there some things that you would advise people to do as a next step or just as a way to get more intimate with their plans and the things that they might need to do to make benefits better in their organization?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that we've touched on a couple of times is definitely take advantage of the services that your broker has. They likely have technology experts. They likely have ACA experts and data experts and people that can help. You don't have to figure it all out on your own, right? If you are going to try to figure it out on your own, I think the first step I would go for is look at your data. Again, the other underlying theme here, run some reports, right? Because even if you don't have clean data or good data or relevant data, when you pull it and look at it, that will be obvious. And that will still tell you what needs to be done, which is cleanse the data, right? So once you have the clean data, then of course it can start informing your decisions. And honestly, this is part of what Stacy, your chief research officer, had put into your white paper and how organizations should be taking advantage of that data. That's how you become more strategic. That's how it should be informing your business decisions. And I love that philosophy. And I think that's the first step I would take as an HR professional looking to enhance our technology.
Anything to add, Ashley?
No, Stephen kind of covered it all. I would agree. I think it's important, right? We always say trash in is trash out, right? So we need to make sure that data is clean and that you're able to pull it. So hopefully whatever systems you're using has that capability to give you those reports and the dashboards and analytics that you're really looking for to make those business decisions.
Yeah, data has always been, I can't remember a time when the whole concept of having bad data wasn't an issue, right? So at some point, maybe some of this AI will help us keep our data cleaner longer.
Hopefully, yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing you guys in a few weeks in Vegas at HR Tech. So that's all the time we have for today. I want to thank you guys for joining me. It's been a great conversation and we'll continue it in Vegas over a beer. Where can people find you on? Are you guys on social or I'm sure you're on LinkedIn, so they can find you on your LinkedIn profiles.
Yeah, definitely. So Ashley and I are both part of Marsh McLennan Agency. I guess I have a pretty common name. If you type that into LinkedIn, it might be a long search. Yeah. I can send you a link.
Yeah. Ashley told us not as common, so it should be easier to find.
Well, we will link you guys up in the follow-up social on this so that people can connect. I want to thank our producers, Brand Method Media Group. They help us get this out every week. And our marketing team. And obviously you, our audience, thank you for tuning in. That's all we have today for this episode of HR We Have a Problem. If you enjoyed this episode, you can subscribe to it on your favorite podcast app. We'd love it if you'd leave a review and just give us your thoughts. Tell us maybe a topic that you'd like us to cover. You can also drop us a line or schedule a chat with us on the website. We will be back in 2 weeks with another episode of HR We Have a Problem. Thanks, everybody. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.